Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. It's your host here, Annalena. And today I have another wonderful guest here with me. Her name is Megan Megginson. And before I formally introduce her, I just wanted to say hi. So happy you're here.
Mhm. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited for our chat.
Yes, me too. So, Megan is a holistic business mentor and licensed therapist who helps entrepreneurs create more sustainable and energizing businesses. Drawing on her experience as a healer and seven-figure business owner, Megan's unique magic is one of my favorite words, by the way,
Mm.
weaves together the emotional and spiritual elements we need to become deeply rested and wildly successful. Oh my God, I love this. And she is the host of Deeply Rested, the podcast and newsletter that helps people doing good work in the world take incredibly good care of themselves. And you can learn more about her work at www.deeplyrested.com. So, oh my gosh, I love this so much. It's so much like what I believe in and what I stand for because, this hustle culture, I think more and more of us are luckily unsubscribing from that.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot wait to hear. That's probably my first question. Like, what led you into this work of
Mm.
just deeply rested is like, oh my God, it feels so good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's a great question. I'm gonna do my best to give you like the TLDR answer. Otherwise, we'll just be chatting about this one story for 5 hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the shortened version is, I came out of the womb, perfectionistic, high achieving
Yeah.
people pleaser, like so many of us, and just really spent the first several decades of my life taking things really seriously, working really hard, achieving a lot of things. And I burnt out really early in my career. So I became a therapist right out of college. I went straight from college into grad school, became a therapist, opened a private practice. And it was, serious business being a therapist, doing that really intimate, deep healing work. And it exhausted me. It was draining me. And I had to go through a whole process of really discovering what it was about me that one made me so susceptible to overworking and overfunctioning for other people, but two, it made me feel like I was more sensitive and had less fuel in the tank than so many people around me. I think that will be lifelong work, like really understanding myself. But that was when I started to learn about being a highly sensitive person. I was learning more about introversion. Eventually, I stumbled into human design and discovered that I was a projector. And that was a huge aha and helping me understand my own energy system and why I was so prone to burnout. But along that journey, I also started doing a lot of thinking and writing and research about burnout and hustle culture. I started learning more about exploitative capitalism and oppressive systems and all of the ways in which the world that we live in really sets us up for failure in our bodies, failure in our hearts. And it just lit a fire underneath me. And over the years, it's become clearer and clearer to me that not only has this journey been my personal life path, but it's also the work that I am meant to share and talk about and help others figure out how to opt out of these systems and really create businesses that are nourishing and not depleting.
That's so good. Yes. Because especially the coaching space or the whole online entrepreneur space, right, is such a hustle culture. It's all about how much money we make and always the next success milestone. And it's almost like we're never okay with where we're at. It's always like chasing the next thing.
Right.
And so I really find, yeah, just listening to you, it's like, oh, yeah, can we just all do business this way, right? Where we're just
Yeah.
in this, yeah, more relaxed space. And you also say it,
Mm-hmm.
that's the only way how to do it sustainable and
Mm-hmm.
energizing. So this is something I want to talk to you about. How would you define a sustainable and at the same time energizing business? Where you
Mm-hmm.
show up in your most energized way? Because obviously, deeply rested must have to do with that. Because if we never rest,
Yeah,
we always like, we're on it consistently. And even though we sleep, that doesn't always mean we rested, right?
that's right.
So
Yeah.
I would just love to hear your expertise on,
Yeah.
on how you see that connection there.
Yeah, deep rest, sustainability, energizing. Okay, I'm naming those words as a little reminder to
Yeah.
myself. We're going to touch on all of those points. I think, first of all, let's talk about deep rest. And I want to share the way I think about deep rest, what I teach, how I weave it into my own life and business, because our culture tells us that resting is sleeping, right? Resting is taking a
Yeah.
nap. Are you getting enough sleep? And that, of course, is fundamentally important to the well-being of your life. It's are you getting sleep? That's really important. But rest is a big spectrum, and sleep is just one little piece on that spectrum. Am I getting enough sleep? Am I laying down? Am I taking naps? Like that's just one tiny way that we can rest. And to be deeply rested, it's a state that really supersedes how much sleep I'm getting at night. So when I think about being deeply rested, I am really thinking about any activity I do that simultaneously regulates my nervous system and recharges my batteries. So you can think about regulating the nervous system, that's calming down, right? That's like, who, like really loosening our grip on control and perfectionism and fear and anxiety and calming ourselves down so we feel safe, we feel stable, we feel settled, we feel secure. But at the same time, I have to be charging myself up. I have to be refueling my energy tank. So, deep rest is the state when we are both calm and energized. And I find that as business owners, this is really important because sometimes we can be really chill and calm, but have no energy. And
Mhm.
that's a problem because if we have no energy, we're not going to be able to take action in our businesses. We're not going to be able to do the tasks and the labor that needs to be done to move our businesses forward. But the opposite is also a little bit dysfunctional when we feel super charged up and energized, but we're also really dysregulated in
Mhm.
our nervous systems. So maybe we have a ton of energy, but we're also full of fear and anxiety. And
Mhm.
then we're in more of like a manic place in our businesses, but we're taking like lots of action and we're working until 3 o'clock in the morning and we're trying to do 10,000 things at once. That's going to lead to burnout. So
Mhm.
it's the balance of these two things that I find to be the roadmap, if you will, to a sustainable business. Like my business is sustainable when I feel charged up, but I also feel really calm and safe and regulated. So that's how I think about deep rest. And then when I'm working with clients or teaching a class about this topic, it's we get to really start having fun and thinking about what are all of the different things I can do as a human and as a business owner that help me achieve that state. Sometimes it's sleep, but it could be literally anything, right? It might be spending time with friends. It might be doing a cardio workout on your Peloton or going to an art museum or laying in the grass and looking at the clouds. Could be any activity that just helps you feel more balanced and whole in your life. So
Mhm.
that's how I think about deep rest. And then when we pull that through as business owners to think about what does it mean to create sustainable businesses? What does it mean to be energized by our businesses? I'm not here to say that there's like any version of running a business that doesn't include some tedium, right? Or that doesn't include like effort. Effort is not a problem, right? Effort, I think people often get ease and effort a little bit confused, right? They think that, like, oh, I want things to feel easy. And really what they're saying is like, I don't want to do anything. Like I just want it to happen. But it's like, no, no, no. We have to effort, right? We have to chop wood, carry water. Like there are tasks that we have to do to move our businesses forward. But I want those tasks to be infused with ease. And when I find that balance, that's what creates a sustainable business. And that's what creates a type of work that really feels energizing because there's so much ease in the tasks that I'm doing that I'm really freed up to be connected to my deeper purpose and my deeper passions. And when I'm doing work that lights me up, when I'm talking about things that I love talking about, I can't help but end the day feeling more energized and lit up than when the day began.
Yeah, I love this so much. I would love to share a little bit from my experience
Please.
as a business owner. So the first thing that came up when you were talking about rest, I love it. That's exactly how I see it as well. And I have had this conversation, I think, with clients a few times. Well, resting is not just sleeping and taking a nap, like
Mm-hmm.
you said. For me, for example, what feels deeply restful when I spend time in nature.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you're in the Pacific Northwest. I've spent a lot of time there last year. And oh my God, just like being out and about and it can be active all day. I feel so calm and grounded in my nervous system. And I actually feel more energized, even though I was physically active.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, and also taking a break from the computer screen. I think one of the things that's most unresting for me these days is spending too much time on artificial screens, to be honest.
Oh,
And
same.
it's like calming my nervous system down from getting away with that. That feels like
Mm-hmm.
rest to me, right? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not constantly like engaged with my senses, or even sitting down and eating a wholesome food and taking some time
Mm-hmm.
is also both restful and energizing because also the food, right? And
Mm-hmm.
our
Mm-hmm.
digestive system is turned on when we're relaxed,
Mm-hmm.
then we can also turn the fuel into more energy rather than when we rush, because then we're in fight or flight and we're not really going to get the energy out of it. So it's kind of like, how are we doing it, right? Who are we being? And even I know when I work, when I'm under pressure, I notice my breath is shallow and I'm actually in a stress state when I work, but I can also intentionally calm down my nervous system and do my work at a slower pace
Mm-hmm.
and be more present.
Mm-hmm.
That feels totally different for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you mentioned effort and ease. One of my favorite words is actually effortlessness, because oftentimes I feel like it's misunderstood. People think like effortless means no effort. No, it
Mm-hmm.
means not putting unnecessary effort into things, right? Where you're
Mm-hmm.
pushing and where you're forcing because you think you have to do it. Effortlessness for me means where you do effort, but it feels easy because
Mm-hmm.
you are doing what's aligned for you. You're in your zone of genius, right? You're also doing the right
Mm-hmm.
thing, what's meant for you, and you have awesome joy doing it versus trying to push and force. Because
Mm-hmm.
then it's like we're putting unnecessary effort into it.
Mm-hmm. Mm. I love that. I love that. I think that we've been so much about our society, it's very black or white, right? It's like
Mhm.
this or that. And I think it's like you're a success or you're a failure, right? You work hard or you're lazy. And
Mm.
we're given these binary choices. And I think what we're talking about is it's the gray area in the middle. And it's like, okay, hold on a second. It's not, I'm not a hard worker or I'm lazy. No, no, no. It's I'm going, of course I'm going to effort. Of course I'm going to
Mm.
do the things, the tasks, the activities that I need to do to grow a successful business. But I'm not going to do it through the lens of capitalism, right? I'm not going to do it through the lens of hustle and grind and wear myself down to the bone. And I'm not going to do it through I'm not going to do it because I believe that my value and my worthiness as a person hinges on what I have to show for myself.
Mm.
I'm doing it because, like you're saying, because it's my zone of genius. It's where I'm meant to serve. It's because I feel energized when I effort in this place. But yes, I love what you're saying about this effortlessness. Can I really track in my body if the effort that I'm putting into my business is feeling aligned? Is there flow? Or am I, struggling to climb uphill because the tasks that I'm doing maybe aren't meant for me, or I'm trying to do too much too fast? I think this is a really juicy place for business owners to slow down and start really paying attention to how you feel in your body during the workday. Like, can you start to track? How am I doing? Am I feeling ease, or is this feeling like a struggle? That right there will give you a ton of information that'll help point you in the right, it'll help you course correct. Maybe it's a better way to think about it, so that you can move towards more of that ease and effortlessness that we're talking about.
Yeah, I love this. And I know you're also into the gene keys, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this, but there are two gene keys, the first and the second gene key. And the first gene key
Yeah.
is the archetype of the divine masculine, and the
Mm-hmm.
second gene key is the archetype of the divine feminine. And Richard Rudd even says it in the book. They should have been reversed, where, the feminine is supposed to come first and then the masculine. So the
Mm-hmm.
masculine is the effort, right? It's the doing, it's
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
output. But when we do this from a dysregulated, stressed, tired nervous system, right?
Yeah.
It's only going to go so far, and you've experienced it. It leads to burnout. And I think with the work that you're doing is so beautiful because you're bringing back the feminine. And I love how you say the
Mm-hmm.
gray zone. It's funny. I heard this just this week from somebody else, and I loved it because one of the big things that I always talk about is like we have to get out of this binary thinking and this black or white thinking, and it's not this or that, it's this and,
Mm-hmm.
because we can also fall too much into like, oh, I'm gonna go with the flow and I'm not gonna have any strategies or any planning, not whatsoever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just gonna sit on my couch and meditate and all the magic's gonna happen. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, that when we take care of the feminine and we have this well nourished foundation, our physical well-being, mental, emotional well-being,
Mm-hmm.
from this place, when we tap into the masculine, the
Mm-hmm.
first chinky energy, I mean, it's so much more powerful, the ripple effect and the impact we
Mm-hmm.
can make. And
Mm-hmm.
we're gonna tap into this effortless.
Mm-hmm.
We're like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're still doing it, but we're not
Yes.
making it unnecessarily hard.
I so deeply appreciate what you're saying. It's really slowing down. And I think it's hard for a lot of people to relax into this conversation about the masculine and the feminine, because for many of us, there's a reckoning when we really start thinking about these ideas. There's a reckoning where we have to face the fact that we have been living so much of our life in the masculine energy. And that the balance, even when we think like, oh, I'm a feminine being. Yeah, but what energy is leading the way in your life? And because we live underneath this umbrella of patriarchy and capitalism, it's been beaten into our bodies
Hmm.
to live from the masculine, to live from the doing place. And so the first step, I think, is just taking a breath and giving yourself so much grace and compassion as you start to see just how much masculine energy has worked its way into the nooks and crannies of your life. It's a lot. It's too much. We need to rebalance the scales. And that can be a really intense emotional process for some people, but it's really important that you do that work. Because once we start shrinking the amount of space the masculine is taking up in our lives and in our businesses, then, like you're saying, we're clearing the way for more feminine energy to come in. And the way I like to think about it in my work with clients is that we always want to feed the feminine energy first.
Yeah.
We want to feed that energy first because the feminine is the part of us that is intuitive, that is creative, that knows what to do next. The feminine energy is the compass that guides us forward, that births new ideas.
Yeah.
And then once we tap into that intuitive clarity about what we're doing and what step we need to take next, then we get to call on our masculine energy. Then we get to call on our mind and our doer to say, all right, we've received the plan, we've received the objective. Now, masculine energy, work your magic, make it real. And when we start to dance with ourselves in that way, when our feminine and masculine energies start to work together in this like beautiful tango, that's when I experience the most expansion in my life and business
Mm.
and the most ease. And it's coming back to magic. It's pure magic when that happens, when you really start to feel that integration and that balance. It's just nothing like it.
Yeah, and this is really going back to the gene keys. So the second gene key is this energy about direction,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in the shadow, we feel dislocated, we feel lost.
Right.
And
Mhm.
if we don't have the courage to actually tune into, like you say,
Mhm.
what direction am I supposed to go? So this is for me, like, where is my zone of genius? Like, what do I love to do the most?
Mhm.
You know? And this
Mhm.
sometimes can take weeks or months where we're in the void because in the society we have
Mhm.
been so
Or
conditioned,
years.
or years, yeah, decades. Like we have been conditioned like, oh, I have to do this job. Like you were a therapist the traditional way, and you're like,
Right.
that's not my path. Your body showed you, right? And then you took this
That's right.
time to like really immerse yourself into the feminine and like
Mhm.
let it immerse and like let the feminine show you like,
Mm.
what direction you want to go. And then again, like from this place, tapping into the masculine, that's where the magic
Mhm.
is, you know? And
Mhm.
I think we are just here to help society shift into this new paradigm. And
Yeah.
from my journey, at least, I also know that I had a time where, well, first I was fully in the masculine and it didn't work, right? It was totally like
Mhm.
pushing a boulder uphill and hitting
Mhm.
one after
Mhm.
the other, trying to replicate other people's success formulas, like doesn't work. And then I fell too much into the feminine, right? Because I was
Mhm.
so like
Yeah.
anti-masculine energy,
Yeah. Mhm.
not against men, obviously, like the hustle energy, the doing and everything,
Mhm.
trying to figure everything out. And yeah, at some point it turns into like mixing the white and the black and turning into the gray, where you find your
Mhm.
happy sauce, where it's like you're
Yeah.
dancing between the two and you're appreciative of both. And it's not about
Mhm.
making one right and one wrong. Because
Mm.
the thing is also one cannot exist without the other, right? Like there
Mhm.
is no hot without cold. There is
Mhm.
no masculine without feminine and vice versa. So
Mhm. Mhm.
it's really when we can see this. And I think it's in so many areas of life. If we can just allow both
Mhm.
spectrums to come together, like
Mhm.
we're gonna have so much more harmony rather than
Mhm.
saying this is right and this is wrong. And like even
Mhm.
with opinions with people, right? I always find it's like people are saying this is the one way and another person says no,
Mhm.
this is the way, and like, well, maybe there's a truth to both. And what
Mhm.
about you come up with your own truth,
Mhm.
right? And just integrate that.
Mm. My gosh. I love this conversation with you. Like, yes. And I just want to harken back to what you said about, because I think it's been true in my journey. And I think it's true for so many of us that when we're going through personal growth and transformation and integration, that often we are swinging between extremes on the pendulum.
Mm.
And that's such a normal part of this, self-discovery reclamation process, that maybe you start really rooted in the masculine and then you have this reckoning, right? Where you're like, whoa, I see what's happening now. And like, I don't want this. So then your pendulum goes whoosh and swings all the way deep into the feminine. And then you have to spend some time there. Like, this is how we learn boundaries, right? This is how we learn. So we spend time there. We really feel into the shape and the size and the quality of what it's like to be in the feminine. And then the pendulum can start to swing and start to settle eventually in the middle. And this is that gray space, that integrated space. And I have to remind myself of this all the time, that this integration is lifelong work.
Yeah.
That for especially for those of us who do struggle with perfectionism, we want to get it right. We see that we hear like, okay, I need to integrate my masculine and my feminine. Okay, well, give me the checklist and I'll do that.
Mm.
My brain is on board. Yes, I see why that's important. I see why that's the right thing to do. Let me do it. But it's not that easy. It's not that easy. That we are unwinding, unraveling whole lineages, right, of belief about the binary, and the work that we're doing to create this integration, this integrated masculine and feminine. It is such big work. And I think we all just have to slow down and give ourselves a lot more grace, a lot more compassion, and a lot more patience as we let this process unfold.
Yeah, exactly. Because like you said, no, it's a lifelong journey. And you guys, we haven't
Mm-hmm.
figured it all out. I think what's really key here is the awareness about it. I find that's
Yeah.
really where the magic begins because
Mm-hmm.
the problem is really only there if we're not even conscious of it. We're like hustling and
Mm-hmm.
grinding. We're trying to figure out with the masculine, how do I have to fix my life and get a different job? And then you experience the same thing again. And when you can just like become aware that you have operating
Mm-hmm.
from this extreme in your life, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then get curious about how you can bring in more rest, how you
Mm-hmm.
call it so beautifully, more of the feminine energy. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, then create it in your way. And the thing is too, it's going to look different for everyone, right? It's not the same,
Yes.
like what rest means for other people. It may be going skiing is restful for them. I love
That's right.
gardening, for example, anything with nature, or
Mm-hmm.
spending time with animals, or being around friends that are really uplifting, that can be so recharging and nourishing. And you can be around
Mm-hmm.
another group of people that is draining all the energy out of you, right? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there is no one recipe. And that's why
Mm-mm.
the feminine is so important, to actually get clear on what is it that deep rests actually means for you, you know?
Yes.
And the other thing is too with the feminine, but I have noticed the more I lean into it, like the synchronicities are just showing.
Mm.
And it's like life gets
Mm-hmm.
excited and like, she gets it finally. Now we can send all these
Mm-hmm.
things because it comes from this more
Mm.
aligned direction. You know, we all
Yeah.
came here for a specific purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that we know it mentally what it is. I mean, I think our heart can sense where it's going,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but like the exact steps, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Like, and it's probably
Yeah.
like we haven't even scratched the surface, even though we have our
Yeah.
podcast, we have our
Mm-hmm.
businesses. But I think my mind is just so small in the context of what's possible. And it's
Mm-hmm.
only through the feminine that we can access this quantum field of
Mm.
unlimited possibilities, and where our unique gifts are actually meant to be shared in the world.
I oh, let's say, I don't know, 5, 7 years ago, I noticed that I was really struggling with business planning.
Hmm.
And it was, I was going to like retreats and workshops and all these like, oh, make your 5 year plan. And I used to be able to do it and I just couldn't do it. Like everything in my body was resisting it. And it just, oh my God, I just felt like I was just bashing my head against a wall. I was miserable and it wasn't happening. And it's taken years for me to understand that what you're saying, that's why I couldn't do it, because I was settling into a more integrated relationship between my masculine and feminine. And I was really starting to relax into the unlimited possibilities of the universe and of my life. And I had this moment where I just realized, wait a minute, I am not interested in what my brain thinks is going to happen 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Boring. No, like I don't want to know what's coming next, because what's coming next is going to be something that blows my mind.
Hmm.
Like I can't even imagine what is coming next. And I think that is why a lot of people who are connected to the feminine energy really struggle with the structure of being a business owner and kind of the conventional teachings about how to achieve your goals, right? To have these really detailed plans, and plans are really just the mind's way of controlling what is happening in life. And the more connected you are to the feminine energy, the more you realize that's all an illusion. Like there's no such thing as control, there's no such thing as certainty. And then we began, so this is kind of been my journey was, I started very kind of conventional as an entrepreneur and the masculine, and then I swung all the way deep into the feminine, where I was like, I'm just going to meditate and like take it one day at a time and trust my intuition. And but then I've realized, like, okay, hold on a second, actually it's a blend. It's
Yeah.
a blend. I want to lead with the feminine, I want to lead with intuition, I want to release my grip on needing to know what comes next, but I'm going to blend that with some structure, right? I'm going to blend that. I might not have a 5 year plan, but I am going to have a 6 month plan, right? I'm
Mhm.
going to have a 1 year plan, but I'm going to grip it really loosely. I'm
Exactly.
going to let it change and evolve. And I think that finding that balance as an entrepreneur is work I'm sure I'll be doing forever. But how do I blend intuition and soul with structure and form? Because it's those two things combined that help me move through this material world in a way that feels sustainable and energizing.
Yeah, I love to hear this because that's almost exactly how it has been for me. I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
cannot do any planning whatsoever and 5 year plans. And now it's more like I have an overall plan. It's very loose. That's the most important because if we attach to anything, we're not allowing the feminine to guide us, right? Because
Right.
all we ever know is the present moment. If
Mm-hmm.
thinking too much about the future, then
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because we're trying to control the outcome. And
Mm-hmm.
well, that avoids the magic that is in the unknown at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. So now it's more
Right.
like structure for me is like have my podcast on a consistent basis, right? It's coming out every week or my email newsletter.
Yeah.
Getting more organized in my business. I'm still working on that, right? Like all the files on my computer and my email inbox. And that is more of the masculine energy or tracking certain things in my business. That's something I currently work on or think about working on more.
Yes. Tracking.
Yeah, because it can get out
That's
of
hard for
like,
me.
and me too. It's still a challenge for me, but at least I have much
Mm-hmm.
more compassion for myself
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I also know that there are some people it comes easy to them and that's what they do, right? And that's all they do, but they're not tapped into the feminine as much. And I know that we need people that are sharing what we're sharing here today because I think the
Yeah.
majority is still more stuck into trying to plan and trying to figure everything out. But then it's about getting curious, like, how can I bring in a healthy way of planning into my business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and always be attached to the outcome because it's probably
Mm-hmm.
be way better and bigger than
Yeah.
what we even can comprehend. Because anytime I plan something, it comes from my mind, and that's always based on what I know from what is already existing in the past. Like we cannot
Mm-hmm.
create anything new and more magical in the world if we are not letting life surprise us and show us new ways that we couldn't even think about or ever plan, right? So,
Medicine, the words you're sharing right now.
yeah,
Yes, yes.
we should
And
provide.
again, grace and compassion, right? Because it's a lifelong practice of like really letting that, we started talking about how do we unsubscribe, or I think like how do we opt out of hustle culture? Well, it's a lifelong practice of choosing this instead, right? Choosing the feminine, choosing the organic, choosing the intuitive, choosing the magic. And that doesn't happen overnight. We have to let ourselves, just like our gardens, right? We grow, we go through cycles of change. And
Mm,
that's also part of the magic of this life and of being a business owner is that we get to go through these cycles over and over again, moving closer every time towards the manifestation of our higher self. And I think that's such a gift that we get to travel that journey in this lifetime and that we get to do it as business owners, as people who are sharing this work out in the world. It's all good if we let it be good.
mm. Yeah, and we're showing the way to so many people because at least in my audience, like that's what people crave the most. Like it's not about the big success. It's not about making X amount of money. Of course, that's also important to some level, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's more about, does my business feel good? Does this feel like I'm
Yeah.
doing the right thing? Does it bring me fulfillment? Does it allow me to actually have freedom and free time in my life where I can just do whatever I want to do, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And where I also have passion for what I do and it doesn't feel like a chore, in some way, or where we feel like we're dependent on it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yes. We're speaking the same language.
Yeah, and that's why we could probably talk for like hours and days and all. So, one
Yes.
thing I'm curious about, because you did mention it briefly, because that's one of the really big things I have been doing for years, is human design and gene keys. You said that was also a big
Mm-hmm.
part of your journey. I would love to hear a little bit. When did it come to you? What was your biggest
Mm-hmm.
takeaway from it? Are you still working with it?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes. When did it come to me? I'm bad with time. But let's say like about 4-ish years ago.
Hmm?
Um, 2 lifetimes ago. That's how I measure. That's how I measure things. How many lifetimes ago was that? Oh, that was like two versions of me in the past. Um, yeah, a friend, of course, through just a series of synchronicities. I met someone who I formed a relationship with, and then she was like, you should know my friend. And her friend was a human design reader.
Mhm.
And it was funny because human design had been in my orbit for several years
Mm,
prior to this point, but it never really called to me.
mm,
And I think it's because like I was in some business communities, I was in like some mastermind groups where there were people who were talking about human design, but it to me always felt like they were talking about it in a bit of like an exploitative way.
mm,
Like it was always just like another assessment to help me be more successful.
mm, mm.
just like another tool, like another piece of information so that I can like mine who I am in order to hustle and grind more.
Yeah.
And like that's how it was landing for me at the time. And I was just like, I'm not interested in that. But then when this person introduced me to this person, this person, by the way, the reader, her name's Jessica Rose, and she's an incredible human design reader and now a really dear friend. I connected with her and she was like, I should, let me do a reading for you. And I was like, okay.
Okay.
I'll give it a, fine.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like this, like I like you and I'm curious enough to give it a go. So she did a reading for me and it was just like mind blown. Which I know is what so many people say when they get their first human design reading, that it was just so hyper specific
Mm,
about my life. It didn't feel generic.
mm,
Coming from the Western psychology world as a therapist, I'm a little over assessments, right? Because, oh, there's just like assessments galore, and so many of them are generic and can mean anything. And when I started sitting with human design, I was like, oh, this actually feels like this can't mean anything. Like this only means this, and it means it for me. And it felt so personal and so specific to my experience that I couldn't ignore it. And at first she like lays out for me the 5 energy types, and she's like, I'm just curious, what type do you think you are? So of course, like everyone, I'm like, well, I think I'm a manifesting generator. And I was like, but the more you describe them, I was like, I think maybe I'm actually a projector. And she was like, correct. And then she starts kind of reading my chart, and the more she talked about the kind of energetic makeup of projectors, I just like my whole body just started softening. And I
mm,
was like, oh, this really lands, like this is right. And now I'm starting to see so clearly all of the places where I'm trying to be someone I'm not.
mm,
And I would say like that's how it has been the most helpful to me over the last few years. It's really just helping me highlight the places where I'm out of alignment with myself,
mm,
and my body backs that up, right? It's like,
mm,
okay, so the chart says this, and I stay really curious about that, and then let my body tell me, like, does that resonate or not resonate?
mm,
And it almost always resonates. So that's how learning about the energy types has been really helpful for me. And then the gene keys I personally find to be just like it can be overwhelming. It can just like, it can be a lot. So I like to just take it in like really tiny pieces, and I just sort of wait until I feel called
mm,
to dive into a particular sequence, and I'll just take it like one key at a time. And I've got the giant book, and I'll just go through and highlight and ponder things. And so it's not, I haven't done a deep dive sort of linear study of all of my gene keys. I just am letting my intuition guide me around, what feels right when. And every time I get the nudge to look one of them up or to kind of take a look at a sequence, there's always some kind of gem that I'm ready to receive right in that moment. And then that gem I get to just contemplate and percolate on
mm.
for months sometimes before I feel called to dive back in to take another look.
I love this because that's actually how the gene keys are meant to be used. Very slow. I mean, Richard Rudd is
Mm-hmm.
all about, I think somebody called like a slow roast burn or something, or
Uh-huh.
gently slurp your tea. Like he's all about gentleness and slow pace. So, and the gene keys are the most powerful when we go almost like take at least a month just to contemplate on one of the gene keys.
Yeah.
And he even says in the book, you can either go through the sequences, right?
Mm-hmm.
Follow the lines and the spheres
Right.
and everything. And the other way is to do it and completely intuitively, like you have been doing, where you just
Mm-hmm.
like you look at your chart. Oh, I really feel drawn to this. Let me look it up, and then
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
be with that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's also like it's in a way you're doing it in a deeply rested way
Mm.
because we can do human design, gene keys, and all these assessments and tools and have to figure this out. And that actually, especially with human design, talking about black or white kind of thinking,
Mm.
we can use it in a way where we think, oh, this has all the answers for me and I need to figure this out. We're putting our power outside of ourselves, or we're letting it limit ourselves, right? That's not
Mm-hmm.
how it's meant. That's not how I see it. But I see it a lot sometimes, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when we can see it very loosely and only take what resonates as an affirmation or confirmation of what we already know about ourselves, but we kind of need that permission slip.
Yes.
And then along with that, go deeper into the gates through the gene keys. Like it's so magical and it's so
Truly.
powerful, right?
There's an image coming to me as you're saying this, which is like getting my human design reading felt like someone taking a highlighter in the book of my life and just like highlighting the main statements.
Yeah, that's
And
cool.
then I could just see it. And then I could just see more clearly, like, yeah, here's my whole life. And I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You know, I'm not like
Mm,
throwing anything away or dismissing anything about myself. But now I'm just seeing more clearly, like, what is the core essence of who I am and how I'm designed to show up. And I have my body there confirming for me through sensation and emotion, because I am an emotional authority. So I'm like feeling the emotion. I'm like, okay, yes, like these are the highlights I want to move towards in the future. I'm going to kind of move away from some of these strategies that I've been using that really exhaust me. And I want to move towards these highlighted sentences that feel full of ease and effortlessness.
mm. Yeah, I love it. Like if it's serving us, if it's empowering us, confirming for us so we can trust ourselves more. That's like in a simple way. I always say like, you know, we can talk about a chart for like 10 hours and get all up in the head and be all confused and overwhelmed. But the biggest message of human design is get out of your heads and get into your
Mm-hmm.
body and listen to
Mm-hmm.
your body, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And what your body is telling you is unique. It's going to be different than what's right for another person, right? You
Right.
know what's best for you. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I love to hear that because
Mm.
I have experienced it also myself, you know, the magic, obviously, of human design and with so many people. And it's really cool that we have access to these tools, right? And this wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It really is.
Awesome. So, how can people find you, Megan, if they feel
Mm.
called to check you out more, perhaps work with you?
Thank you for asking, and thank you just for this whole conversation. It's
Mm.
I didn't know I needed this week, but now that I'm here, I'm like, oh, I needed this conversation. And it just sort of reminds me that um this work that we're talking about, like we're doing this work in a world that it doesn't want us to do this work. And we have to have people and places that bring us back down into our bodies and into these deeper conversations so that we can charge ourselves up. This conversation felt deeply restful for me. My nervous system is feeling calmer. I'm feeling more grounded, and I'm feeling super energized. Like when we
Yeah.
hang up off this call, I'm going to want to just like write some things down, you know? So thank you for the deep rest that was this
Mm.
conversation. And yes, if you're listening and you want to connect more with me and my work, I would love to hear from you. I really feel called to be a person on this planet who's helping people doing good work in the world through entrepreneurship take really good care of themselves. So I think of my work as the personal healing for business owners, and you can learn more about that at deeplyrested.com. And you can check out the Deeply Rested podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. Deeply Rested, you'll find it, you'll find me. And subscribe to the newsletter if you like reading. If you're a reader, I send 2 newsletters a week all about different deeply rested thoughts and ideas. So, newsletter, podcast, send me an email. I would love to connect with you.
Yeah, I love it. I'm going to make sure I put everything in the show notes. And then one final question I have for you.
Mm.
What's like the one biggest wisdom nugget you want to leave the listeners with?
All right, let me take a breath and see what wants to be shared.
Mm.
Mm. The slower you go, the faster you get there. I
Yeah,
think that
I'm with
has been
you.
like the lesson of my life. And that little phrase shows up always at just the right moment when I need to hear it. And I trust it, even though my mind sometimes gets a little scared and doesn't believe it. My body trusts the wisdom and the truth of that statement. So that's the nugget I want to leave for anyone who needs to hear it right now. The slower you go, the faster you'll get there.
I totally agree with you. I have experienced this so many times. And I don't know if you know, but this podcast used to be called The Art of Slowing Down.
Oh, yes, I saw
Um,
that. I was like, great
um,
title. Why'd she change it?
well, because I really got into like, I want to help people really live in their genius. And it
Yeah.
got me a little bit too much into the feminine. 'Cause I was
Mm-hmm.
also in this energy and I just needed this focus on, I want you to live in your genius.
Mm.
And
Oh,
slowing down is still
the
a
evolution.
yeah, it's still a huge
Mm-hmm.
part of my message. But it no
Mm-hmm.
longer felt like what the main focus is about because I also have a lot of very
Mm-hmm.
empowering and take the right action kind of energy.
Mm-hmm. I feel that.
So yeah, and yeah, grounding energy. I think you noticed that too.
Mm.
Mm. But yeah, it has been for me too my whole life. Like I remember when I was a kid, my mom always was like, slow down. The way I was eating, the way I was walking, I was
Mm.
always kind of rushing.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned this lesson over and over again. So thank you for reminding me as well of it again.
My pleasure.
Because we need it. Like even if you have a podcast for almost 3 years that has a message, it's like we still
Mm-hmm.
need to hear it because life always has these other agendas and is telling us other things. So
Yeah.
this was awesome. I can't wait. I can't wait to have more conversations with you
Yeah, same.
because yeah, we feel like soul sisters in a way of how we see
Mm.
the world. I think the work we're doing is well, very unique and different, but very similar in the energetics behind, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, these are those deeply resting, nourishing, energizing conversations. So we showed you
Mm.
guys how you can be deeply rested and energized
Mm-hmm.
at the same
Mm-hmm.
time. Because I think that's also how people feel listening to this, It's not just you and
I
I
hope so.
feel like
Yeah.
now we can start the day and
I
get,
mean, I feel like if you're listening and you made it all the way to the end, you probably are nodding along with us,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan. It was such an
Thank
honor to
you.
have you. Thank you all for listening. And I'm very happy to be back with you all on the next episode. Ciao, everyone.